Signal Line from the Tor Project, and this is Jacob Applebaum, also from the Tor Project. We were actually here in this country for the past couple of days teaching bloggers from Tunisia and from lots of other countries how to be safer online, and we decided to drop by your class today to teach you a little bit more about Tor. So feel free to jump in whenever you like. I think I'll get started. So Tor is a program. It's free software. It's open source software. And the idea is it's a program that you can install on your computer, and it will build a path through the Tor network. So the Tor network is made up of volunteers. There are about 3,000 volunteers around the world who are running the Tor program configured as a relay. So the idea is that your Tor software, your client, builds a path through 3 of these relays so that when you're web browsing, somebody watching your network connection sees that you're going towards Tor, but they don't know which website you're going to. And the website sees that you're coming from Tor. They don't know who you are or where you're coming from. So the main goals there are anonymity from the local perspective, meaning Tunisia Telecom doesn't learn which websites you're going to, and anonymity from the destination. So for example, if you're connecting to Gmail and you don't want Google to learn who you are or where you are, then you would be able to use Tor to keep yourself safe from Google. And then the third goal is circumvention, or getting around censorship, or circumventing censorship. The idea is because it's an anonymity system, because somebody watching you can't learn what destinations you're going to, they can't decide whether you're allowed to go to that website or not allowed to go to that website. So there are a lot of people who are using Tor in Tunisia over the past year, before the revolution and also after, in order to be able to be safe while talking to other people and telling them what's going on in the country and learning about what's going on in the country. So we've got some interesting graphs that maybe we'll show you later on of the number of users who are connecting to the Tor network from various countries. We have a fun one where in Tunisia it goes up like this for a little while around January. And we've got a really interesting one from Egypt where there were maybe 1,000 users every day using Tor, and then they blocked Facebook and it spikes, and then they unplug their internet and it flatlines, and then they turn the internet back on, and now there are more users using it than before. So a lot of those people who learned about it to get to Facebook while Facebook was blocked ended up continuing to use it because they realized, wait a minute, my military was in charge before the revolution, during the revolution, after the revolution. They haven't actually taken away any of the censorship or the surveillance systems, so I want to continue being safe on the internet. How should we add from there?
So I'm sure I'll mispronounce this, but Amar Forofor, who here has ever been blocked by the firewall here? Raise your hand if you've ever...
شكون il a été bloqué بعمر 404 qui
Raise your hand.
Yes, I think everybody.
Tout le monde.
Raise your hand if you've ever been censored. I want to take a picture. Great. So, to take what Roger said and to break it down into something very concrete, if you were using Tor on the internet, instead of connecting directly to places, no one would have raised their hand. So, if you use Tor, the chances that they would be able to block you approach 0. Tor worked throughout, both before, during, and after the revolution, with basically no problems. Occasionally, the censorship would try to block Tor, but they didn't do a very good job of it, even though they had an American corporation, SmartFilter, and likely another American corporation, Cisco, helping them. So you can take a very easy step, practically, such that when you chat with people on the internet or browse the web, the government here can't see what you're doing. They only know that you use Tor, and they cannot censor that unless they block the entire Tor network, which even during the revolution, they were unsuccessful in doing.
So you say that the government can see what our chatting, our exchange and everything, and it's possible?
Yes, so let me give you an example. A few days ago, Syria had logs from their deep packet inspection devices leaked to the internet. And in these logs, you can see chat messages from people in Syria, every website that they visited, all the websites that were blocked. So this log file that's released, it is very likely that the internet monitoring here and the censorship here produces similar log files. So that means what you did before and during and after the revolution may be written down somewhere. And using Tor means that all that they write down is that you use Tor, if they even write that down. So this is quite a nice thing. And it also means that it is possible for you, when you are using Tor, to think about the internet in a different way. Which is that if you experience some block page, right, for everyone that raised their hand, which was basically everyone, when you experience the blocking, it is because they are watching. So all of the pages that aren't blocked, they looked at them and decided it was okay.
They looked at them, knew that you were looking at them, and then decided that it was okay.
So this is really important. It means that if the page is not blocked, you are still being spied on. SmartFilter, the American corporation, both of which we have no involvement with and sort of dislike a great deal, or at least I do, they enabled this. The things that they did were sold or given in order to test them in other parts of the regions of the Middle East and in North Africa. So things that worked here in Tunisia were given to other dictatorships to help crush dissent and to stop revolutions and to control thoughts, essentially, in order to control what we might call the right to read, which is that you want to read a website and they will stop you and pretend it does not exist. So using Tor preserves your right to read and to know what is actually happening in and outside of Tunisia. So if you take another step back, you can see that the surveillance system that exists there is actually quite pervasive and could be used for many things beyond just censoring you. So it is possible that they will simply write it down and wait. And someday, if you ever get in trouble, they will go and find the logs that correspond to you, and they will know all the things that you have done. So even if today you are a perfect model citizen, tomorrow they have a file on you that is longer than any file that governments have ever had prior to the 20th century. And that's enabled thanks to American corporations with their excessive capitalism. And so to offset that, we really suggest that you use Tor and that you join the Tor network. So for example, who here uses Skype? Skype is a peer-to-peer network, just like Tor. So when you make, say, a phone call or a chat message, it goes through other people. So everyone that raised their hand, if you had maybe like a ball or something, you can throw it between people here, right? And you can imagine the message goes between people. That is just like Tor, except unlike Skype, it's free software, as Roger mentioned. So you can look at the source code and see that when we say that it is secure, you can see that it is what we say. Right? Skype does not allow you to do that. So it's a little bit questionable. In fact, it's a lot questionable if you should trust a system like Skype. Maybe it's okay. I don't think so, but maybe it's okay. But with Tor, if every person that raised their hand and said instead of running Skype, they were running Tor, then the number of Tor relays in Tunisia would be exactly the number of people who raised their hands in this room, actually. And this is how the network is built. People who care about their privacy turn the software on and say they want to help. And that is the network. So where Blue Coat makes their money by oppressing people.
Blue Coat is another American corporation. They're the company that sold the surveillance and censorship tools to Syria. And they're the ones who created the logs that Jake was talking about before.
So those companies, they make their money by creating human misery and profiting from it. Whereas Tor is the idea that all the people that want to reduce that human misery, to give secure communications, to create anonymity, to get past blocking and censorship, all they have to do is click a button and then they are helping. And so each one of you can, similarly to the way that you guys waged a successful revolution so far, help to create secure communications for all of the rest of the people in the world and for yourselves. And this is what makes the network sustainable. So it changes from needing to pay someone in the West to working together in solidarity with people all over the world, where you can modify the software, you can study the software, you can distribute your modifications to your neighbors in class, and you are free to, of course, request these distributions of modified software when people essentially share them with you in some way or another. So,
one of the things that we're hoping to do is come back for Securinets in April and do a more thorough workshop and training where we describe how Tor works technically. This is a computer science security class, right? So we're sort of talking about politics so far, but also the application of computer security to making the world a different place. So we're hoping to show up and do more of a training. How many people here use Windows? How many people here don't use Windows? What else is there? OS X or?
Who uses Ubuntu or another kind of Linux?
Yeah, perfect.
Wow, nice.
Okay, good choice. Earlier this week we were talking to a bunch of bloggers who are really at risk from their government, and they all were using Windows. And the first thing that we thought was, we can give you Tor. Tor will keep you safe on the network. But here you are attaching your Windows computer to the network, and somebody is going to break into your Windows computer, and then it doesn't matter how safe Tor is. So for both Windows and OS X and Linux, we have a new package we've been working on called the Tor Browser Bundle that comes with Tor and a GUI that shows you how to configure it, and also a Firefox that's pre-configured to safely use Tor. So there are really two challenges in terms of anonymity or privacy. The first challenge is, how do we get your data from here to here without anybody knowing that that happened? So that's transport anonymity, or something, I'm not sure which phrase to use here, but that's the underlying anonymity part that Tor focuses on. And that's a hard problem. How do you build a network, peer-to-peer network, that's fast enough and that can scale enough while still being able to provide anonymity? And from the research, from the academic research angle, one of the questions that we ask a lot is, how do you measure the anonymity that you're getting? If I give you a Tor network with 2,000 relays, and they're all in Germany, and I give you a Tor network with 2,000 relays and they're all around the world, the second one is clearly better. But what if it's 2,000 relays in Germany versus 1,000 relays all around the world? Now this starts to get confusing in terms of which one is safer against what sort of attack. Where was I? You want to pick up, or I'll try to reconstruct?
Sure. So an interesting question you have to ask yourself is, what is it that you want protection from on the internet? So for example, who here likes the censorship? Who wants censorship here in this country forced on them? Well, that was pretty obvious. So, although I had sort of hoped someone would raise their hand, I will take a different path now. So an interesting thing, though, is that means that your interests are aligned with each other, but not necessarily with the networks between you and anywhere you want to go. Because unless you run those networks, what you need to know is that you cannot trust them. At best, you can trust them to connect you to someone else, but you will never be able to know if they will write down what you do, for example. So you have to decide what it is that you want. If what you want is to have them write that down, then Tor, as an anonymity network, is something they can write down. You have to decide how long you want to be safe. So for example, if what you want in 6 months is for them to have only Tor traffic, you can make that choice. But sometimes you'll want to make a trade-off. So for example, you'll want to watch a YouTube video or go to a Facebook page, and you'll want it to go in an extremely, no configuration from any computer. So you'll choose to use a computer and you won't log on to it, you'll just use a computer in front of you. You're actually creating a data trail that associates with this computer, and maybe with you as well, depending on the content, because the sites that you visit are not safe. sometimes. So in the case of, say, YouTube, it doesn't use HTTPS by default. It can use it, but it doesn't by default. So a question you have to ask yourself is, are you worried about YouTube knowing you're in Tunisia? Or are you worried about the Tunisian Internet Agency or Tunisia Telecom or another ISP seeing you're going to YouTube? And if you're not worried about either of those things, but you have a video you want to upload, does it change when you have a video you want to send versus when you have a video you want to watch? And the key thing to think about is, if you only use Tor, or things like Tor, when you feel that you are taking a risk, you leave a new pattern behind. The pattern is, when you have something to hide, you use security and privacy software, and other times, you just go directly. This is really bad news because that pattern is very obvious for someone who's watching the network. So what you might want to consider is that if the network is always untrusted, and it is always the case that they will write it down, and that's a safe assumption in a country where they watch the network and block it and censor sites actively. It's not a certainty, as it is in Syria, as we know because of the log release. But if we know that this is something that might happen, you might choose to create a default behavior that is privacy by default, so that when you really need privacy, or when your neighbor really needs privacy, nobody stands out. It's the same behavior. So for example, who here has an Android telephone? No? One person, okay. And who here has, say, a Nokia phone? And who here has something like an iPhone? Okay. Exactly 100% more than Android. So, fantastic. As a slight tangent, Tor creates something that is almost not possible with the telephone network, which is that for a moment, you can create an identity that only lasts for the moments that you wish them to stay what we would call linked. So you start Tor, and you browse the web over Tor, and you go to YouTube, and you upload a video. And then you click around, and you watch another video, and you watch another video, and then you turn off Tor, and you throw the computer away, or you erase the hard drive, and you start again. YouTube knows that all of those activities are linked. The Tunisian Internet Agency and Tunisia Telecom only see Tor traffic. And your computer, now that it's gone, it's unlinked in a sense. But YouTube still has all that stuff tied together. So the cell phone network will almost never allow you to do something like this. Where with Tor, you can click give me a new identity or start Tor at a different time, and you're a completely new person, able to read websites and post to websites on the internet. Whereas with the telephone, you have an identification module that you put into your GSM phone. And whenever you make calls, in order to bill you or to do other things, they have to track you. And in fact, GSM telephones are essentially tracking devices that allow you to make phone calls, right? So you can think about it from one side to the other, which is that GSM phones, the content, everything about them can be watched by the way that they're designed. The architecture of cell phone networks is a lot like a cell. You're locked in, and they get to see everything that you do when you're inside of it. Whereas with Tor, the idea is that it will connect you to another place where you're no longer in a cell, and where you can change what people see about you. So for example, on the internet, nobody would know that you were in Tunisia when you were using Tor, because by default, Tor does not reveal the language you speak. It does not reveal the IP address you come from. It doesn't show any of the things that directly identify you, as would normally be the case when you connect on the internet. And so this kind of linkability is really easy with cell phones. You know that you're linked. You pay a bill on a regular basis. And with Tor, it is the opposite of that. There are no logins. There are no passwords. And you only send data over Tor that you choose to send over Tor. Meaning that when you link things, you can be aware of what it is that you have linked together, and then you can throw it all away and start again without doing anything except pushing a button.
So another more concrete example here. A few years ago, there was a user in China who connected to Yahoo for his email, and he had an email account at Yahoo, and he was using it to talk to lots of people. And then China decided they wanted to know who he was. So China they went to Yahoo, an American company, and said, tell us who this user is. And Yahoo said, you're a government. I follow the laws of all governments. Here's your user. And then they threw him in jail. Some people got upset, but that's how companies work. So all of these companies that you connect to, whether it's Google or Yahoo or Skype or lots of other ones, they collect all sorts of information about you. It's their job is to make money. They make money by learning more about you, and then they figure they'll make money somehow. So if that person in China had been using Tor to connect to Yahoo every time, then Yahoo would not have known who it was. They would not have had anything that they could give out to China to identify the person. So that's another example of, you can use Tor to have an email address, which is, it talks to lots of people, maybe it starts to build a reputation, maybe it's connected in the social network somewhere, but it's not the same as you. And if you want to have 2 or 3 identities that are not related to each other, you can do that over Tor. So part of the goal here is to give you the chance to not put all of your identifying information in large databases that companies in America build or companies in Tunisia build. There's surveillance right now that's writing down every website you go to. We're not sure if there is or not. Earlier today, we were talking to the president of ATI and trying to learn more about what the censorship is actually doing these days. And he says the censorship is off, except then later he said, actually not in government groups and not in schools, it's not off there either. So some censorship is off, but some censorship is still happening. And every time, as Jake said earlier, every time you go to a website and it's censored, it's clear to you that they're watching you. But every time you go to a website and it's not censored, they're also watching, it's just not as clear. They're making a decision for each website whether you're allowed to get there or not. So, tag.
Yes, so, yeah, okay, great. So, this is the point, I think, in which, since we don't have a projector and we don't have the protocols up on the wall, and we don't really want to draw them on this wall, I think it would be best, since we hope to come back. We could do that, that's true. Well, let's see. Who here actually has questions that we might be able to answer in the next 5 minutes, knowing that we should think about these things so that if we are able to come back in a few months, we can have thought for quite some time about it and maybe give better answers. So it doesn't have to be an easy question now, but if you think of some questions, we would really like to hear it, and hopefully we can answer it. Ladies first.
As soon as one person, perfect.
Why do the website of the Tor Project is blocked in the when the revolution in 14 January, the website of Tor Project is blocked in Tunisia. I tried to download the Tor Project to enter to Facebook and mail, but I cannot.
The reason is because blocking a website is very easy. It has 1 or 2 or 20 IP addresses that we generally do not change. And the internet censorship and surveillance equipment in Tunisia is designed to block websites. It's also designed to block peer-to-peer traffic, but blocking Tor is much harder to protocol than blocking Tor, the website. So the Tor website, it's been blocked in lots of countries that are not free. In fact, you can measure how free a country is by how many websites it blocks. The more websites it blocks, the less free the country, almost always. Sometimes the kind of blocking is different than you would expect, and it isn't obvious. It's, for example, the police taking the website down. But for you, what you can do is send an email to gettor@torproject.org, and we'll email you the source code or binary builds, including a web browser, for your computer, you know, for your next revolution.
Another answer there are a lot of mirrors of the Tor website all around the world. So if you Google for Tor mirrors, you'll find a list in the cache, in the Google cache that you can perhaps go to. And something that you all should think about ATI just set up a mirror of the Tor website. This is good. It demonstrates that they understand open source and they want to make the world a better place. On the other hand, if you're trying to download Tor, do you want to download Tor from ATI? Maybe you should let other people from outside of Tunisia download Tor from ATI.
This is a key point. When you get the software, you need to check its integrity. So assuming that Roger is really Roger and I'm really me, then you should get our PGP fingerprints from us so that you can verify that the signatures of the software on the website that ATI mirrors, tor.mirror.tn, is really the software that we have released or worked on in some way.
I want to know, why will I choose the Tor project? Which are the advantages when I compare it with the other proxies?
Like what?
Like the hotspot, like the other ones.
So there are two main things to think about when you're comparing Tor and other privacy or circumvention tools. The first thing is it open source? Is it free software? Do they show you a design? Do they tell you how it works? Do they tell you what security properties they think it provides? And do they explain why they think it provides those security properties? So on the Tor documentation page, you'll find an actual research paper that describes how it works. You'll find lots of other scientists writing papers analyzing it. On the Hotspot Shield webpage, you will find a short quote saying, "Hotspot Shield is great. Don't worry, it's great." So you should learn how to analyze which ones are providing more detail.
That video is going to get cut up such that you were saying just that, and it's on the Hotspot Shield website.
Okay.
That is the reason why, when someone says something is good, you have to ask them again, oh really? Why is that? Because everybody ultimately has to have some benefit from the thing that it is that they are doing. In this case, Roger is just really crazy about anonymity and wants to help people. Hotspot Shield wants to put ads into your web browsing. And all of the traffic that goes to Hotspot Shield comes right out of Hotspot Shield.
So this is the second thing to keep in mind. The first one is the design open? And the second question is the network that you're going through centralized or decentralized? In the case of Tor, there are 3,000 volunteers around the world, and you build a path through several of them, so there's no single place in the network that knows about both you and the website you're going to. In the case of a centralized design like Hotspot Shield, everybody's traffic goes into one computer, they look at it, they know who you are and what you're going to, and then they give you the page you're going to.
And so they change it.
What do you mean?
Hotspot Shield changes it by injecting ads as their sustainability model. They want to profit from your web browsing. So for example, UltraSurf is a program which is, I think, quite bad that I've been researching, and it does something amazing. You connect to it, and it's a single hop proxy, just like Hotspot Shield, but UltraSurf has an added feature. It also censors the internet. So you jump from one